dance therapy is rooted in the belief that the mind and the body are interconnected. So it's a two-way street. The way that we think is going to impact the way that we move, the way that we carry ourselves, our posture. Whether you want to or not, if we are living, then we are moving. Our breath is moving inside of our body. Our blood is flowing through our veins all over. Our heart is expanding and contracting. Our lungs are also moving as we breathe. So even just the act of being aware of that, you're doing the work.
Welcome to Real Women, Real Results, the podcast where we go beyond the reps and dive into what it really takes to live a stronger, healthier, and more confident life. I'm your host, Jamie Revelle, women's fitness expert and founder of W3 Body Women's Training Gyms in Chicagoland. Each week, we'll bring you real stories, expert insights, and the tools you need to create real results. Let's get into it. Have you ever felt something deeply, grief, anxiety, frustration, but couldn't quite put it into words? What if the answer wasn't talking it out, but moving through it instead? Today's episode is one I'm really excited about because we're diving into something most of us have never tried, but maybe we have all needed all along. My guest today is not only a licensed dance movement therapist, but she's also a dear friend. We met in college. We both attended Tulane University in New Orleans, and we're actually housemates for a little while. We almost burned the house down once with some broccoli, and we had lots of Mardi Gras shenanigans over the years. So Vicki is a dear friend. We go way back, at least 15 years. And since then, I've been so inspired and impressed by her work, and also just that she followed her passion in doing what she loves and making a career out of it. She works with a wide variety of clients, helping people heal emotionally and reconnect with their bodies through movement, not just words. And today she's here to help us understand what dance movement therapy actually is and why it might be the missing link in your emotional wellness journey. So welcome, everyone. I'm Jamie Revelle. I'm your host. I'm the owner of 2 women-only gyms here in Chicagoland. And with me today is the wonderful and amazing Vicki Hockman. Welcome. We're so excited to have you. And thank you so much for being here on our podcast.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm taking it all in, everything you said. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. And before we get into dance movement therapy and all of the benefits, can you tell us about your background with dance, your education in dance therapy, and the work that you've done that has led you here up to owning your own dance movement therapy practice?
Yeah. So my background with dance, I started dancing from a very young age when I was only probably 2.5 years old.
Aww.
I'm originally from Mexico, so all of this was in Mexico. My first language is Spanish. All of my basic dance training was in classical English ballet. They had an English ballet school in Monterrey. That's where I went, and I stayed through the time when I moved to the United States, which was somewhere around 14 years old. And
That still blows my mind.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Just like knowing you, and I know your family, and like how polished that you are in everything you do, from speech to dancing. It's so cool. So anyways.
Thank you. I appreciate that because English is not my first language. And sometimes, the things don't translate exactly. But yeah, dance, just from the very beginning, I always felt so connected and like I could express myself. I could connect to these stories that I was learning to tell through my body. And then I could really get into these stories myself through ballet. When I moved to the US, I stuck with ballet, but I was introduced into the world of more modern dance and more dance and so as a way of self-expression. And I became really interested in that and just noticing how I felt throughout my transition. I mean, coming from a different country, different language, different culture, and being in the United States, that whole transition was really supported with my dancing. So that was huge for me. And I just kind of knew this is my way of life. This is something that will always be with me. And so then getting into more of the improvisational work and modern dance, I studied Gaga, which is a movement language that was developed by Ohad Naharin, a director of Batsheva. It's a company in Israel. And he talks about movement as a way to express what's inside and really values movement, not necessarily dance. So that's where it all kind of came together for me. And I found out about dance movement therapy, which combines the art of dance and just the art of expression with the psychology behind how it all works with the brain. And I found it fascinating. And then all the pieces just kind of worked. And here I am.
Yeah. Wow. Did most of your, I guess, training for what you do now, did that come from like your master's program? Because I remember at the time that there were only a few in the country. Am I remember?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So not undergrad, but obviously the continuing education after that.
Yes, and I would say that specifically with dance movement therapy, there is no option to do it in your undergrad. They really take all of the experience from the life of someone who loves to move and
Mhm.
how that kind of sets yourself up to be someone that's ready to go into pursuing a master's in dance movement therapy, which is under the umbrella of creative arts therapy. But yes, the training does happen during the master's. That's where you really kind of get ready to go into the creative art therapies, using dance specifically as your mode of therapy.
And can you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you've done? I remember some of it when you were living in California then.
Yeah.
And you worked with women specifically, right?
Yes, yes. I've worked with a lot of different populations, but I can talk about some of the ones that were really foundational for my work now.
Mhm.
So after my grad school program, where I interned at a school that was kind of like an outpatient center for kids with behavioral issues, including kids that were on the spectrum and other kinds of trauma that was happening there. They had a really interesting program where they could receive their school, but also receive creative art therapy and other therapies to support them. So I did that, and then I also interned at an inpatient psych hospital. And that, I mean, entering into that world was something I never imagined. I mean, I went in and I was like, I've stepped into another world. Like, what
Wow.
is this? How am I even going to do this work? It was something that was so foreign and something that I had never been exposed to. So there was definitely a very steep learning curve
Mhm.
during my internship and my education, getting my master's. I'm so grateful for my supervisors who really held my hand and supported me through learning and really becoming a clinician myself in these different settings.
Yeah.
After that, I moved to California and I worked at a forensic state hospital. So working with incarcerated individuals with different commitment codes. And what that means is that, you have people that are kind of sentenced to spend a longer period of time in the hospital. They plead what they call not guilty by reason of insanity, so that they were not in their right state of mind during the time they committed their crime, so they are there for a longer period of time. And then you have people that are deemed incompetent to stand trial. So they committed a crime and they go to trial, and the judge decides that they are incompetent to proceed with their trial. So their trial is placed on hold and they have to go receive treatment to stabilize in order to go back to trial. So a lot of the focus of the treatment is on stabilizing them on meds and then to be able to understand what happens in the trial, to go back and be able to properly defend themselves and make decisions that are going to support them in the best possible way. So working with an attorney, I worked with both of these different commitment codes. And where my focus came to work with incarcerated women was with the second one. So women that were deemed incompetent to stand trial and they needed to stabilize and learn how to present themselves, how to go back to trial, to face their charges, and to work with their attorneys and then either serve their time or whatever came from that. So it was a
Mhm.
very, very challenging environment. And also, I mean, I learned so much, so
Yeah.
much. It's hard to say it with words, but yeah, so that's where I worked there for 5 years. And then I really feel like that was such a foundation to then be able to work with any other population after that.
Yeah. I imagine challenging but extremely rewarding.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize all that. That's amazing. So I guess speaking to, these women and then anyone else who's, and I realize that there's a broad, like I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but with them specifically, or if someone is just dealing with anxiety, let's say in the world that you just spoken, competent, but just extremely anxious and overwhelmed or just stuck in terms of expression, why do you think that is? Like, where does that struggle come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, exactly a lot of what we were dealing with in that setting and also in my work beyond that setting. What happens is that, our mind and our body are so connected. So, in the moment where you can feel that sense of, you're dysregulated from the inside, there's so many emotions happening. And especially when we're going through overwhelming experiences, the area of the brain that is associated with language actually shuts down, so it's not available. When people use the expression of, I just have no words, or there's no way I can explain it, it's really real. Like, neuroscience shows us that it's really real.
Mhm.
So just knowing that is really validating to a lot of the people that I work with. And so, because our emotions and our sensations move through our body, they are actual sensations that are felt through the body, and that verbal part of the brain is shut down, then what are we left with?
Mhm.
All of this movement, all of the emotions that are happening on the inside. So, when we can give a voice to that through movement, and with my training we can begin to regulate that, right? Because it can become very overwhelming, but we learn how to break it down, how to connect to the body in a safe way so that we can then work with those emotions to come to a place that feels more balanced, more grounded, and more present. So then we can really move through that anxiety as opposed to around it, or as opposed to trying to push it down. We really get in touch with it and we can work with it.
Mhm. So it's so interesting because, and I feel like there's a lot more said now about movement in particular as a form of therapy. And I always talk about that with my members with that's just such a hidden benefit. A lot of people come to us to body composition reasons, and where that's important for physical health, like let's talk about that mental health piece as well. Like let's, or at least not underestimate the effects that movement has on that. But in terms of from a therapeutic form of, I hate to say relief, whatever I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Um, from a therapy standpoint, do you feel like dance movement therapy is well known, extremely accepted in that realm?
I think that there's been a lot of progress. I think that more and more people are getting to know the creative art therapies. A lot of times people really have heard about music therapy, art
Hmm.
therapy, maybe dance therapy, not as much. It's a little bit smaller. But I think that there's been a lot of work, and it really does take a lot of advocating and a lot of educating, even in the different settings I've worked in. I get to work with an interdisciplinary team, meaning that I work with a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, and we can kind of get to know what parts I can support as a creative arts therapist, as a dance movement therapist in particular, that maybe they are not so in touch with.
Hmm.
And yet, more and more, there's so much research now. I feel like somatic therapy is such a buzzword now. People really seek it out. People understand that we must include the body in the healing process so that it can be really whole.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that there is a lot more we can do to educate people and to have people understand what it really is, because it is hard to explain with words. It's something
Hmm.
that is nonverbal. So when you ask it to be verbal, it is challenging.
Totally.
But yeah, I think it's a both and question.
Yes.
Yes, it's more well known, and yes, there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And speaking of what you were talking about with, like emotions and things like all sort of trapped inside, if we don't have an outlet for that, how does that show up in our bodies and our behavior?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's so clear, well, to me as a dance movement therapist, but there's a lot more evidence to support this, is that a lot of times, we have a lot of people say, oh, I hold a lot of tension in my neck or in my shoulders. And I think there's something to that, right? The
Hmm.
moment that we get more stressed, what happens to our body? A lot of people kind of walk around in this way. Our breath becomes more shallow. It's very different than when we feel more relaxed. Our shoulders go down, our breath can go up and down, full belly breath. So all of this has an impact. When we are more stressed, our posture changes, the way we breathe changes, the way we walk into a room changes, the way we interact with people changes, and all of this has an effect on the body.
Mhm.
So maybe step one is I have a little pain here. Maybe you give yourself a little massage. That's you responding to your body right there. You give yourself a little relief. But what happens when, some people are so disconnected from their body and they're in that hustle and bustle, go, 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 that you just go for a whole day, a whole week, a whole month, even before you even notice that something is happening. I'm using the example of the neck in this, in our conversation here, but sometimes it's the stomach. Sometimes, I feel like it's kind of knocking from the inside.
Mm.
The body can really communicate with us if we are open to listening and say like, hey, I'm here. I've got some pain in my shoulder. What are we going to do? And if nothing happens and that kind of keeps going, we kind of ignore it and push it down, then it's going to come up even stronger, or it's going to speak in a different way so that we can eventually listen. And a
Mm.
lot of times for some people that happens a lot later on in the process, where it can turn into a different problem. Maybe it's like a rotator cuff then, because the tension just keeps moving. Or maybe, it turns into illness if it's, our organs aren't receiving all of the oxygen. They're not moving in a way that is connected to the rest of the body, and we're kind of blocked.
Yeah, the implications are huge.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like, what are the signs that someone might need to move, whatever that might look like for them, rather than talk it out, talk through their emotions? Is it just kind of what you said, just like holding it's just the small things that can add up over time if you don't do something about it?
Yeah, I think that movement is a basic human need.
Mhm.
And I like to talk about what I call the movement continuum. And actually, this concept comes from Christine Caldwell. I can give you information on her book and all of her. I really recommend this book for people interested in mind body connection and how it all kind of works with the brain. But, anyways, she talks about the movement continuum. And this is what I tell a lot of people: whether you want to or not, if we are living, then we are moving. Our breath is moving inside of our body. Our blood is flowing through our veins all over. Our heart is expanding and contracting. Our lungs are also moving as we breathe. So even just the act of being aware of that, you're doing the work. So now when I meet with clients, I mean, fast forward from the forensic state setting, I have been meeting with clients that we call kind of more normal neurotics. People are out in the world who want to feel connected, want to have a space to talk about, what's going on and connect to their bodies. This is really helpful because a lot of people come to me and say, I'm not a mover. I don't like to move. And when I can bring in this attention to what is the movement that's happening inside of you, then they can connect to that moving piece. So to answer your question, it doesn't have to be this physical, intentional, outright, like moving and doing this more directed practice. But it is about the expression. It is about coming back to the movement that's happening internally and how we can get to know it, how we can bring it out into our hands, maybe as a beginning way of showing what's happening on the inside so that we can process it, so that we can work with it.
So you feel like there's a lot of benefits. What I was going to ask next was like really defining dance movement therapy and talk us through like what a session looks like. But before we do that, do you think that it sounds like from what you're saying in terms of movement, and of course we're born to move, we live to move, movement is life, how is just moving, how is that different from like a particular therapy session?
Well, maybe we can start with what is dance movement therapy, because
Mhm.
I think that'll kind of sequence it all together. But dance movement therapy is a form of psychotherapy that always comes back to the body. So we might be talking about what is going on in your life, and we always come back to, well, what is happening on the inside? Somebody might say, oh, my heart's beating really fast as I'm talking about this. Or, oh, I feel kind of frozen and really tense in my shoulders as I'm talking about this. So we really come back to the body and we give a body a voice through everything that's happening. Dance therapy is rooted in the belief that the mind and the body are interconnected. So it's a two-way street. The way that we think is going to impact the way that we move, the way that we carry ourselves, our posture. Our thoughts are impacting that. And then the way we move, the way we hold ourselves is going to impact our thoughts as well. Like I said, we always come back to the body and then we can work with it. We can shift our posture. We can shift the way that we are walking, the way that we are moving to then see what the impact is on our thoughts, on our mood. To answer your question about how is it different than just moving, or I think in this case, if we're looking at dance and movement, how is it different than a dance class, for example, right? The main difference, I think, is that I'm not telling people how to move. I'm not setting a choreography. I'm hearing people's story. And sometimes I'll notice that as they're talking, maybe they become more animated or something's happening with their hands that is really noticeable. So maybe I'll bring that up and I'll ask questions about that. Might say, oh, I see your hands are moving kind of in circular motions. Tell me about that. What is happening there? And then that might elicit more emotional content. So we're moving into a place that is more bottom up. We are engaging the mind through the experience of the body. We're becoming curious about how something that's emotional is moving through us and what is interesting about that. What does that say? A lot of times for people that in that space of understanding how things are moving, memories come up. We get in touch with the preconscious and subconscious material that maybe wasn't available had we just been talking. So we enter into this new space that for some people is really scary. It's unknown. We're not used to this way of operating. But I do believe that words can only go so far, and then we need to really become more reflective and more be in a contemplative state where we can allow for these connections to happen.
Wow. So, yeah, I took a couple things there. I would say sounds very intentional, of course, like your sessions and therapy in general in terms of how that differs from a class or just, everyday movement. Yeah, it's super intentional the way that you go about it. And it sounds like in terms of how you go about conducting a session, it's like what are you taking in to be able to help them express, to
Yeah.
put back out basically?
Yeah, and what I talked about just now, the work has the same foundations, but it does look very different if I'm working with an individual versus if I'm working with a group of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, just want to name that because when I work with a group of people, then of course there's a structure to follow. There are some kind of key elements that I keep in mind to keep the group going. So when working with a group, in a group setting, I might have people that are in a very different place. Some people who may be really resistant to work through movement, some people that are really ready, some people that might be kind of feeling more low energy, some people that are like ready to go, high energy. And so we always start with a warm up just to get connected with the body. This might look like a body scan in some ways, but we are getting in touch with what kind of movement is available in our feet. We might move through different body parts to then feel more alive in our body, feel more available as to how our bodies can move. And then once we kind of are more kind of individually focused in this warm up, what is this? What is interesting? How can my hands move? How can my shoulders move? Then we begin to see the other people in the group. We begin to mirror some of the movements that we're seeing. And some of this happens organically where I don't even have to say it. And then I can just name it. Oh, I'm noticing we're all kind of moving in this way. And sometimes, depending on the group, I might be a little bit more verbal and I might be more structured in the way that I'm calling different things out. Like I might, ask people to give me a movement that feels good right now, and then we can mirror it, things like that. It really, as a dance movement therapist, we are really trained to respond to the needs of the group. And that might be very different depending on who we're working with. I always, when working with a group, we have a warm up, then a theme develops with the group. A theme develops that might be around being really grateful to have a space to move and connect in a way that is nonverbal, that feels deep, that feels just like a relief in some way. It might be, if I'm working with a specialized group of people, it might be around coming out of a depressed state and how they feel that happening. So there's a moment for that to happen through different images, through different metaphors. And so we've got the warm up, the theme development, and then there's a closure where, as a group, we kind of reflect on what we've done through movement, what kind of things came up, what things stand out, what was surprising. And then together we come up with a way to close the group. And it's kind of like a ritual. Maybe we take a deep breath and ground all together. Maybe each person wants to go around and share a movement in reflection of how they're feeling now as opposed to before they started the group.
And I mean, just the like improv going on with it. You as the leader of such a group, I
Totally.
imagine that's probably really cool, but also really challenging in the moment. I mean, you've got to be super tuned in to the group and what you're seeing and what you're vibing and all the things, all the energy.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's exactly right. There's the improvisation, and as a leader, as a facilitator, I have to be very, very connected and in tune with what is happening from each individual and from the group as a whole as
yeah.
well. So, yeah.
Amazing. Well, so whether it's a group session or an individual session that you've done, what are some of the emotional and physical shifts that you've witnessed through this work? Transformations, anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the feedback that I've gotten is just about people say, I feel so alive in my body. Like maybe parts that they hadn't connected with in a day or in a week, they feel more available to move, available to receive information. Other feedback has been just about feeling a sense of peace when everything is kind of fast paced outside of the group space, that
Mhm.
they feel peaceful and able to fully be connected with themselves and with others at the same time. I've had people say that they feel really calm and really energized at the same time. And I love it because it's so true.
Yeah.
We can feel really productive and really energized while also being grounded and connected to ourselves. So it's this place of really finding self-regulation through movement, right?
Mhm.
Maybe we come in feeling like really energized, but in a way that feels kind of overwhelming and
Mhm.
overstimulating. And then through movement, we can take that and we can shift it. It's really empowering for people to be able to experience that through movement and without the words.
Yeah, absolutely. What is coming to mind from what you're saying is like, I imagine feeling, and I've experienced this when I'm like going from one thing, let's say coaching a session to like going to talk to someone. And I come
Mhm,
out with all this energy and I'm trying to just almost organize it. So it's like this chaotic
mhm.
energy that I have to like really focus on toning down. Whereas
Yeah.
I can imagine through, having that space to just express it would be like it feels like a sense of clarity, I guess, at the end.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
sounds
totally.
awesome.
Yeah, it's really learning to use your body as a resource
Mhm.
because body can help you with these regulating moments that we all need, whether it's up-regulating or down-regulating.
Absolutely. So, what are some techniques? Like, I don't know if you give this to any of your clients in any type of session. Are there any techniques or something someone can do to try to utilize their body to regulate some of those emotions in any given time, whether it's, they're feeling nervous, they're feeling stressed, anxious. What do you
Yeah.
recommend?
Well, here's something that I do kind of at the beginning of a lot of my sessions just to get people to connect with their bodies in a way that is maybe something they haven't done in a long time. I mean, I'm going to ask you a question now.
Oh, geez.
Uh, so when people say, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" A common response is what?
Good.
Good. Good. I'm good. I'm fine, but that's not really how you're feeling. That's kind of something that we use, and it's helpful because we can just kind of say it and move on. One thing that I ask, and I think that listeners can do in their own way, is to ask yourself, how are you doing? And to say it non-verbally, maybe with a hand gesture, maybe with your body. How are you doing? Maybe it's a shrug of the shoulders. Maybe it's raising your palms up and kind of like juggling, like, oh, I don't know. No, maybe it's a thumbs up. There's a lot of different ways in which we can use our body to say how we're doing. And this gives us information. Like if I ask how I'm doing and I'm kind of like right now, I'm talking to you, we're recording and I'm feeling a little like nervous. Nervous, right? When my
I like
fingers are
it.
going like this, they're
Yeah.
moving quickly. So by knowing this about myself in this moment, I can see what's happening on the inside and I know that what do I need right now? I need a breath and I need to ground, and this is what will serve me in this moment. So, just a very quick and simple way to connect with your body in this moment is asking yourself, how are you doing? And to show yourself that with your hands or with your body. And then you can kind of make a decision on, well, what do I do with this now? What do I need right now?
That's awesome. That makes so much sense. Like, just the way that you put it with I like this. This was good. Whew. That's
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
like
a lot of times people get caught up and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But it's like, if you just kind of like let it be a free flowing movement from what you're feeling on the inside onto your hands, then that can be a really simple way to begin this way of relating with yourself.
mhm, and a really powerful tool. And I
Yeah.
imagine just something that just like anything, just takes practice to give yourself that time and that space to tune into your body really, and
Yeah.
take that first step to doing so.
Yeah, exactly. And
Wow.
that's the thing. It doesn't have to be a whole long time that you give yourself to connect. It can be really simple and yet so profound.
Mhm. That's amazing. Wow, Vicki, this has been fantastic. Where do you feel or not where do you feel where can listeners find out more about you and your work? We didn't really touch too much on it, but you moved to Texas, you started your own dance movement therapy practice. And
Yes.
so yeah, where can they find you and your practice, and do you offer virtual sessions?
Yeah. You can find information about my work and my current offerings on my website, and that's just www.vickyhockman.com. So that's a very easy way to find what I'm up to and what's going on. I do offer virtual sessions at times. I don't offer them regularly, but if I do, I would post it on my website, and you can find my social media and other things through my website as well. Yeah, and to find out more about dance movement therapy and dance therapists in your specific area, you could check out American Dance Movement Therapy Association, which is kind of like our overarching organization, and that's adta.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on this podcast. This podcast is all about inspiring my members, women in general, to really live their best life. And that comes from exercise and strength training, that at least from what I do, but it also comes from finding those different modalities where they're able to talk through it, dance through it, move through it, and also learn about all things health and wellness through this podcast that I want to offer as a resource. So this is amazing. And you're amazing. Thank you, Vicki. It's so inspiring, again, what you do.
Likewise,
Oh, thank you.
you're really responding to a need that is so, so important. I mean, being in community is what the world needs.
Yeah.
What we need as women, and I'm also blown away by the space that you hold and the community building that you do through your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, to whoever is listening or watching this episode, if you're feeling curious, but maybe a little hesitant, here is your sign to take that tiny first step. Try that movement exercise that Vicki talked about. Ask yourself, how are you feeling? And allow your body to express yourself in that way, and see on the outside what you're feeling on the inside. And if you're ready to go deeper, Vicki does offer virtual sessions from time to time. Either way, I highly recommend to connect with her. Check out her website, vickyhockman.com. Check out her Instagram from her website as well, so that you can connect and learn more. And if this episode sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend who needs it too. And I'd love for you to hit that follow button so you never miss a story that might just be what you need to hear. Thank you for tuning in to Real Women, Real Results. I am your host, Jamie Revelle. If this episode, again, sparks something in you, share it. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Real Women, Real Results. If you loved this episode, be sure to follow the podcast and leave a review. It helps more women find these powerful stories. If you're local and want to join our gym, check out our 4-week trial. Head to train@w3body.com for more info. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, w3body_Berwyn and w3body_Elmhurst for more strength, support, and community. See you next time.